Joint Community Development Finance Meeting minutes. Could I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, next item is the matter of a request for Elyria to join the Lorraine Energy Special Improvement District, ESID, for the purpose of authorizing property assessed clean energy, PACE, P-A-C-E financing. This is referred to by Safety Service Director Calvert.
I believe is in the bottom corner.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I am asking council to consider joining in ESID, as mentioned, and authorizing a assessment to be placed that would qualify the city of Elyria as a PACE-approved, in joining the Energy Special Improvement District and offering PACE financing. Excuse me. So PACE, which is an acronym for Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing, has become a very popular tool in economic development because it addresses the capital stack need in a really innovative way that is super beneficial to both the city and property owners and project developers. So PACE financing was authorized by the state of Ohio in 2009 for commercial projects. And even since that time, we've really seen it grown, and it's really taken off in the last couple of years. So you'll hear many developers say that they won't even approach a project without PACE in the capital stack. The reason it is so beneficial is that it authorizes the property, the parcel, to join the Energy Special Improvement District. And for qualifying projects that have renewable energy or energy efficiency, it can have a special assessment on the property tax that is basically off-balance sheet financing. It can finance up to 100% of hard and soft costs for those eligible costs, which would be those energy efficiency or renewable energy pieces of the project. It can be used on new construction, and it can also be used on redevelopment of properties. So for the city's side, it makes us a more attractive community to do economic development because we can really help address this capital issue. A bank underwrites and manages that loan process, so there's no risk to the city. The city isn't funding any portion of the project. They're just authorizing the project to be entered into this ESID. To join an ESID, you either have to join an existing or create your own. And it has to have a contiguous boundary. So here in Lorain County, the Lorain Port Authority is the body that administers the Lorain ESID. Just last month, Elyria Township authorized joining the ESID, so we now have that contiguous boundary and we are eligible to join as well. So it is a little bit complicated of a process. There's many steps legislatively that have to be approved from authorizing the project to authorizing the special assessment. We are suggesting a demonstration project, which would be the City Hall doing a $500 LED lighting project. So we would put a special assessment of $500 on City Hall. We would get the LED lighting. We would pay that assessment. We are now part of the ESID. When we join the ESID, we would have 2 seats available on that board. The ESID approves all projects as well as the city. So the city would have complete ownership of which projects get approved for this financing. So I have invited the Lorain Port Authority. We have Executive Director Tom Brown, and we have Economic Development Director Tiffany McCulland here. They've prepared a presentation so we can take you through and show you exactly what this would entail for the city of Elyria and how it would work, and then we can answer any questions that you have. So with that, I'll invite you to stand.
Turn on the.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having us here tonight. Like Dawn said, my name is Tiffany McClelland, and I am the Economic Development Director at the Lorraine Port Authority. So we specifically oversee a lot of financing and economic development programs in the city of Lorraine, and we're looking at how we can help better offer these programs throughout the county as well. So the PACE financing is just one of the mechanisms that we use to help businesses be able to better finance in Lorraine County. And right now, we already offer this in the city of Lorraine, but we're looking at ways that we would be able to offer it in Elyria as well. This conversation really came about because in a conversation with Dawn, we started talking about the different mechanisms that you can have in your city to better have economic development opportunities when you have developers come to the table. And PACE financing was a conversation we started really when this administration first came into office. And since then, it's really developed into the need of the businesses in this community recognizing that they could take advantage of this. So that's why we're here today talking about it. So the next time a business approaches the city, you'd be able to offer it. So I'll flip through some slides. And I think that Dawn started to go over an overview of this, so I'll go through the first couple of these a little bit quickly. But PACE financing, like we said, it is an acronym for Property Assessed Clean Energy. Really, it was a mechanism put into place by the state legislator. So not all states actually offer PACE financing, but a majority, probably about half, offer it in some form or fashion. The state of Ohio, I would say, is actually probably one of the best legislative PACE programs for the state. Currently, you can do residential and commercial PACE. However, we are only talking about commercial PACE here today. Residential PACE programs are still a little bit tricky because of the legislation, so what we're talking about is being able to offer this financing program to your business community. So PACE is a way to finance specifically energy improvement projects. So when you think of your downtown corridor, you have buildings that maybe haven't had their windows, their HVAC updated, really anything that you can associate to energy efficiency. So when you think about all of those projects, all those components of a project, they can be included into PACE financing. Really, in a lot of ways, when you're talking about a renovation project, this could be the majority of your budget. So a lot of times what we saw in the city of Lorraine, especially in our downtown corridor, was you'd get someone that would come in, they'd buy a building, and maybe it was a lower cost, but they didn't take into consideration that they needed a new roof, a new HVAC system, a new doors, new windows, lighting. Really, the building needed to be gutted and renovated, right? So this program offers a way to get them that capital because it's an assessment on their property. So that is for the renovation end of things. This can also be used in new construction as well. So when you're thinking about new construction, the way that you're looking at the energy efficiency component is just viewing it as anything that is better than standard. So you can still look at using this on your lights, your HVAC, as long as the system that is being put in that new development is better than standard. So, go ahead. So PACE financing, let's talk a little bit about how it works. So being able to offer PACE in your community is either creating or joining an ESID. And you have absolutely total control over doing either of those. Really what we're offering is the opportunity to not have to go through the process of creating a whole nother organization, setting up a whole new board, and then managing that yourself. Because we already have it in Lorraine and we've expanded into Elyria Township, it would be very, very easy for the city of Elyria to join onto the ESID. So after a city is within an ESID, the Energy Special Improvement District, they're able to then offer PACE financing within their community. So a property owner, whether this is for a renovation or a new construction project, can petition to the city, and this is actually legislation that you guys have seen before you. That's exactly what the city of Elyria is asking right now, to petition a $500 assessment on their building. So whatever property owner, they'll figure out what those energy costs are, decide what the project number is that can be financed, what the eligible costs are, and they will ask for a voluntary assessment. So you put the assessment on the property by asking city council. You have that ability to say yes or no. So let's say you go ahead, you say yes. This is a great project, it's a great redevelopment project, we're going to go ahead and let that business owner levy the $100,000 assessment on their property so that they can do these improvements on their property. And then that assessment is just that payment amount is put onto the property tax bill. So just the same way that you would pay twice a year on your property tax bill, you'll still see your property taxes, but you'll see a special assessment levy amount to pay back these property taxes. And then the payment mechanism for paying back is through your property tax. So when that is on your property tax bill, and as a property owner, I go ahead and pay my taxes and then I pay my special assessment, that goes through the county, gets passed to the city, and then the city pays the lender back. So it really is a very unique financing mechanism to make it so that really you don't have a large debt on your books as a property owner or a business. So a general flow chart for everything that I've kind of started to talk through here, this is exactly the steps that we would take. So we'll start off with an energy audit. So the energy audit is really those qualifying expenses. You and I, we can't really decide what qualifies as energy efficient, right? So you go ahead and you have an energy auditor that's going to take a look and qualify those expenses. So we know that the LED improvements and the new roof that you're going to put on are actually going to provide energy efficiency savings for that building. After you have the energy audit, you have your qualifying expenses through that. So now you know how much you're asking to levy. You're going to ask the property owner. The owner is going to ask for that special assessment. And that's the legislation that's going to come before you for every project in the city of Elyria. So you'll go ahead, you'll get that special assessment request to you, and then you will levy the assessment on the property. After the assessment is levied on the property, the funds get issued from whoever that lender is, and there are multiple different lenders that can take place. And then through the property taxes, you're going to have the collection of those funds. The collection of funds go from the county when you pay your property taxes to the city, and the city pays the lender. And that's exactly how PACE financing works for a property owner. So, okay. So I said there are multiple different kinds of lenders, and there really are a huge list of lenders. You can think of basically the majority of banks do some sort of PACE financing. You can do bonding for projects for PACE lending. The state of Ohio was actually the first partner that we had on one of our projects. The very first PACE deal that we did was the Ariel on Broadway, a redevelopment in downtown Lorain, the old Spitzer Hotel. We actually had a state of Ohio energy loan on that project. So they're a lender for PACE. And then one of my favorites for a little bit smaller projects is NOPEC financing. And NOPEC does PACE financing in a little bit smaller of a range, because a lot of times what you're talking about are projects that are at least $100,000 all the way up to millions of dollars. So your state of Ohio and your banks are going to do $1-million projects and larger. But for that maybe downtown redevelopment that you're talking about, you're going to be able to use a NOPEC type lender that will do $100,000 to $1 million lending. So we really cover that whole stream of project scope. So benefits of PACE. There are really a ton of benefits. The very first one that I already mentioned is really this is off-balance sheet financing. What that means is this debt doesn't go on the business's books right on the front, which is really a great thing, because really the only liability to the business is the actual amount levied per year on the property. So it provides a little bit better of a way to access capital for businesses. In a perfect world, what you see a lot of times happen with these PACE projects is the energy savings for the project, for the improvements that you're putting in, is actually equal to or more than the loan debt that you'd be paying for this. What that means is kind of that example on the right-hand side of the screen that you see there. If you're looking at a $500,000 upgrade project and you're able to put that over 20 years, and let's say that means that after you put that new roof and HVAC and lighting, you actually save $25,000 or $30,000 a year, but your cost is only $25,000. your annual savings is actually $5,000 because you put all those improvements in. Now your bills have reduced dramatically, so your savings end up paying for that assessment. So it's really a unique way to finance your projects. Another great benefit to this is that the assessment stays on the property. So what you see a lot of times in redevelopment projects is someone wants to come in, they want to gut the project, they want to flip it. Well, whatever you put into it, that's your loan, that's your debt. So now you have to figure out a way to sell that property with what you put into it. In this circumstance, you can levy the assessment on the property, and when you sell that property, the assessment can stay with the property. So really, it's a very unique way to be able to put money into a building and then be able to move it to the next user, the end user. You can amortize this over the useful life of the improvement. So what that means for businesses is sometimes businesses can only get a 5 to 10 year debt on whatever they're looking at doing, whether that's equipment or those lighting improvements. When you take a look at PACE, you can take the longest useful lifespan of whatever you're doing total. So think the longest useful lifespan of maybe an LED light is 5 years, but the useful lifespan of a new roof is 20 years. So if I decide to do both of those in my project, I can now amortize the entire debt schedule 20 years. And that's a really long time to be able to offer a business to amortize out for 20 years, fixed rate between 2 and 6%. So really what you're offering your business community is really low interest debt at a fixed rate that they can't get anywhere else. All right, so the Lorain ESID was created 2 years ago now, and I had mentioned this before. We actually did this on the Ariel on Broadway project. So the main reason that I want to bring this up to you is that when you're talking about an ESID creation, one, you do have to have a sponsor project. So a city has to have some type of project, whether that's the Ariel on Broadway, which is actually a couple $1 million PACE deal, or you can do I'll call it a sample project, so a small project on a city hall building to be able to join an ESID, but you do have to have some type of project. Once you are in the ESID, one project in your city is an ESID, your entire city is then able to offer this. So sometimes when you think about assessments and other forms of financing that are offered by the city or the state, you think of contiguous properties. The properties have to be next to each other, and that's not the case in PACE financing. It's just the communities. So when Lorain was able to create the ESID, what that did was open up the opportunity for every community next door that touched Lorain in some form or fashion to be able to join that ESID and then offer PACE financing. So if we look fast forward 2 years, we actually talked with the Elyria Township trustees about joining as well. And we're currently in actually a lot of talks with City of Vermilion, and Avon Lake has some pending projects. So we're talking with all of the different communities here trying to figure out how we can offer this. So we are slowly expanding, but Elyria Township was able to join, and what that did was open up the door to Elyria, because Lorain and Elyria don't touch. So now Elyria Township, they actually did, their sponsor project was a very small project, very similar to the legislation before you, that is just doing a $500 LED lighting upgrade on their township building. So they went through, they passed the legislation, and they're doing that small project. They'll pay back that assessment in 1 year, the $500 in 1 year, and then that's it, they're done. So let's talk about the city responsibilities, because this is really what I would say is probably most prevalent to everyone sitting here. So here are the main 4 things that you have to think about that you will be doing from this point forward if you want to offer PACE financing. First one is that you will be passing legislation. You will have to pass legislation for every PACE project within the city of Elyria. So if a business owner comes in and they want to levy a $100,000 assessment or a $4 million PACE assessment on their property, the legislation will have to be prepared. It'll have to come before your committee, and you have to decide whether you want that to happen or not, right? Now, by that time that the legislation would come before you, it has already gone to underwriting. A lot of lawyers have already seen it. So if they're coming to you, at least you are able to make a decision knowing it's a financially sound deal, right? But it's still legislation that has to come before you. The next would be the city has to certify the assessment at the county. It's a form, so after you pass the legislation, it's one form, just making sure that the county knows that they need to levy that assessment on whatever property that you agree to. And then the city is a pass-through entity for the funds. So what that means is when we talked about the payment mechanism for this is property taxes. So when that property owner pays their property tax bill and that goes to the county, those funds will transfer to the city, which means the city will have to transfer those funds. So it is a pass-through mechanism for the city, so that would be a responsibility for the city. And then last but not least, every city jurisdiction that joins gets 2 appointments to the board. One has to be associated with the legislative arm of the government. So you could think of economic development or legislative. So Dawn could be the appointee, someone on this committee meeting could be the appointee, and then one other person. It could be maybe the first property owner that you do. It could be whoever, but you have 2 appointees to the board that you would have to appoint. A couple other things to note that are really important for you to recognize is there is no liability to the city. So, great question is, so what happens when the property owner doesn't pay their taxes, right? Now, am I on the hook for this? Absolutely not. So what happens if the property owner doesn't pay their taxes is you didn't get money and you're a pass-through entity. If you don't get the money, you can't pay it forward. So when you don't get the money and you can't pay it forward, then the lender is going to come knocking and they're going to say, hey, why didn't you pay this? Why didn't you forward us the assessment for this PACE loan? And you're going to say, I never got it. And they're going to, okay. And then they're going to start actions against the property owner. So if you never get the money, you never pay the money, which means there's 0 liability to the city if payment doesn't happen, right? And then the other great component of this is there's no cost to the city of Lorain, gosh, you see where I work the most, city of Elyria. So there's no cost to any city. Really what the cost is going to be tied in with the lending agency and the property owner. So all the lending agency, the attorneys that are involved in this, because as you can imagine with every kind of mechanism that comes through the state or the federal government, they're very convoluted and you need a lot of attorneys involved. So all of that gets financed right through and paid right through the property owner. So the city actually will never pay out to have any PACE financing in the community. All right. Okay, and then, last but not least, the board of directors. So this is the current board of directors. Elyria Township hasn't actually appointed their 2 boards of directors yet, board members, so we will have those 2, but you will be added onto this. So we're currently a 7-person board, and if the city of Elyria decides to join, then we'll be a 9-person board. So I think that's it. I think that wraps up. So I will open up to questions at this time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll just start out with some questions. I see Mr. Tolet.
I have 2 comments and 2 questions. I promise I'll go quick. Number 1, when Dawn first told me about this, it's phenomenal. I think it's really incredible. Being off book for businesses is enormous. So question number 1, and this might be a TED question, because even though we don't have the financial liability, we're acting as an intermediary. Could this, let's say we had a large employer that utilized $2 million of this for new roof and new power source, as an example, because do we have to carry it on our books as a liability, which could affect our bond rating?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe we carry on our books as a liability.
Because we're making the payments to the county.
Yeah, but it's not a liability for us. The money comes in the form of a special assessment, and we're a pass-through. So we're just sending that money to the lender. So it's no liability on the city.
So we wouldn't show it as,
No.
Okay. Would we show it as an account receivable?
No, actually, I think what this would flow through what we call like a custodial fund. So
Okay.
basically, we're holding money for somebody else and passing it through to another entity. So it would not impact our bond rating or our balance sheet.
Okay. Then thank you, Ted. My last question through you, Mr. Chair. What bank does the underwriting on this? Is it one particular community bank? Is it each loan almost bid out? Could you explain how that works?
Absolutely. So the underwriting is actually done by the lender. So depending on the lender for the project, they will do their underwriting. So for example, we are working on 3 loans right now with NOPEC in the city of Lorraine, and those are being underwritten by NOPEC's financial advisors. They have an entire team behind that. So NOPEC has a loan portfolio and NOPEC has an underwriter. So NOPEC does that. Now, on the other side of that, if you go to a bank, think PNC. PNC does PACE lending. If PNC decides to do a PACE project, a $2 million PACE project, PNC's underwriters are going to do that. So whoever's lending, the actual lender on the project, will do the underwriting.
Any further questions? I see Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I agree with Mr. Tollett. I think this is a fantastic program. I just have one, maybe 2 questions. Is there a dollar amount that the company is allowed to ask for, or is that between the company and the lender?
So there are some very generic guidelines I can give you, but overall the answer is that's between the property owner and the lender, right?
Okay.
Generally speaking, some of the guidelines, PACE financing does not work under $100,000. So you're going to be looking at a project that is $100,000 or more. Otherwise, it just financially doesn't make sense to do it. It makes sense to go get a small business loan. So $100,000 or larger. And then second, another general rule of thumb is they're looking for generally half of the property, the assessed value of the property. So if you have a large company in town that has a building that is assessed at $5 million, they're going to be looking at probably not lending more than $2.5 million would be like a very general rule of thumb. But that truly does come down to who the lender is on the project and what the project is.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, through you, I'm sorry, I went blank. So if Elyria joins the PACE, do we have a certain number of projects that we have to bring in to, or can we do one and be done?
Absolutely. You could do this one project. In order to join, you do have to do the one project. So let's say you did the $500 LED upgrade on this City Hall building, and no business from this point forward ever wanted to do PACE again. That's fine. You're there, you're able to offer it, you can throw it on your programs to offer to businesses, and if they take advantage of it, great. If they don't, you never have to think about it again.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, just one more question. You had mentioned that the company has to go through an energy audit. Does the company pay for that audit themselves?
Yes, the company would pay for that energy audit, but a lot of times what ends up happening is actually the lender will wrap it into the financing. So let's say it costs a couple $1,000s, it'll get wrapped into it, and they actually won't be out a couple $1,000s at the beginning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to add one thing we didn't cover, I don't believe, is that literally anyone who owns property can petition for this. So that means nonprofits can, that means government entities can, private companies can. And as I've been out there in the community talking to people and mentioning that this is something I wanted to bring forward and, was there interest in a program like this, we have had interest from churches, from downtown business owners, from commercial shopping strips, from large manufacturers. We really have seen, once people understand it and know what it is, it's a no-brainer. They really want to go forward with it. So we've seen interest from all different sectors, including nonprofit facilities as well.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, go right ahead. Law Director Deary.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure that I understand this right. So by the time a petition would make its way to council, the board and the lender would have worked out, I guess, that this is a viable program, and application and all of that. Is that safe to say for whomever the applicant is?
Yes, at that point, your underwriting team, the underwriting team for that loan, has already completely assessed that it is viable to lend that dollar amount.
Okay, Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Now, help me to understand that you said that the lighting in City Hall was $500? Is that what you said that you need this loan for?
So in our instance, we're doing this as a demonstration project to enter the ESID and make sure it's approved, and we're demonstrating to the business community that council understands the program and is willing to utilize the program. So in our instance, we would petition for the special assessment. We would not be taking a loan out. We're looking at $500. We would probably turn around and pay it in a year, just to go through the process, understand it, and join that ESID to be able to offer it to the business community and the community at large, actually.
But I thought that you had to have 100,000 or larger, and so this is just 500. Tell me how this is working.
That is a great question, through you, Mr. Chair. That's for a lender. That's a lender's requirements for the amount to petition. Typically, you would not be petitioning a special assessment if you had the cash on hand to do the project. We're doing it as a demonstration again.
Thank you.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Ms. McClellan and Mr. Brown, for coming in there tonight and bringing this. I heard about this maybe about 9 months ago, but it was more for residential, and they were just kind of introducing all that. So I had inquired about that with community development, and it seemed like it was a great project because people here were asking me about it. So I'm in full support of it. I think it's a great opportunity for our commercial businesses in that. What is the timeline from the inception of doing the audit to a completion, like the magnitude of Broadway in Lorraine? What was that time? Was that 3 months, 4 months? I mean...
Well, the first project that we did, the Ariel on Broadway Hotel, used about 10 different financing mechanisms to actually come to fruition. So that is an extremely complex deal. So I don't want to use that as an example because truly that was about 2 years of putting together the capital stack to make the financing work because of all the different components. However, a secondary project that we did, if you are familiar with the old Antlers Hotel in downtown Lorraine, so the property owner of that, they wanted to do all new windows because the windows on that building were just very, very old. So we have done an assessment with them to redo all the windows. The project is completed already. That took about 3 months.
Okay. Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair. First off, unbelievable tool for economic development. When you're talking money at that, on an assessment that's going to get paid off is incredible. That's going to give a lot of avenue for people to do more for their businesses or when they're doing new developments. And of course, all that property value then gets raised and then that helps out the city. So it seems like we're all in agreement that this is great. Is each one of these done on a case by case, like the interest rate will be different because they didn't loan as much or they loaned more money? And would the amount of years that they would be paying it off in the assessment, would that change? How does that work? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The simple answer is yes, that would change based on the project. So some general guidelines that we can give, depending on the lender, is going to depend on those rates. When you use NOPEC, who we found is very popular, so NOPEC has very standard set rates and criteria. So, for example, if you did any project between $100,000 and $1 million, I would highly suggest that property owner use NOPEC. And at that, their assessment is based on the useful life of the project, whatever improvement they're going to do. And then, so that can range anywhere from 5 to 20 years. And their interest rate is dependent on the useful life of that project. So if they just did LED lights and they decided that that was 5 years and that was $100,000, the interest rate is 2.5%. So I can tell you those rates because they're very standard and set. But NOPEC also is a nonprofit lender. They're not in it to make money in PACE financing. So that's going to be obviously different standards than if you ended up going to PNC Bank for PACE financing, who is going to be looking at the interest rates and variable and whatnot.
Through you again, Mr. Chairman, why would you want to go to a different bank? Is there the reason you couldn't get it from somebody else, or, why would you have to change?
Yeah, honestly, there's a couple of different reasons. So one, banks generally are looking at projects, so the lenders in the PACE community generally are looking at projects that are $1 million or more. So that's the first reason. So in theory, NOPEC is almost the only game in town for any project under $1 million. So that's the reason. If you broke that $1 million threshold, NOPEC probably won't look at your project. They're going to pass you off to somebody else. Really, the other reasons that you look at lenders, the same way you shop around for a bank, you might have a relationship with Chase, and Chase might be able to give you a really good rate for PACE financing, but then, PNC decides that they'll beat that, so maybe you change. But realistically, it's just looking for the best deal for PACE financing.
Are there any more questions? Are there any more comments? Does anybody want to chime in? Okay, at this point, Mr. Stewart.
No, I think I didn't have really any concerns about it. I know there was discussion about it. This was just brought to our attention tonight, and just wanted to see if we had the documentation in front of us to really absorb all this information. But I think Ms. McCullen's presentation was outstanding, and what the benefit of this can be. I guess in order to move forward with any of this actions tonight, there is a list of either resolutions or ordinances that need to be passed. Is that common, or can it be just, it seems like, is it a one lump thing that we have to for each thing, or if Law Director Deary want to weigh in on?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, first thing that needs to happen is council needs to petition to join the existing ESID and for the purpose of doing this, I'm going to call it pilot project. Is that correct?
So that is partially correct.
Okay.
So there's actually 5 documents before you.
Correct.
And the very first one is petitioning, is allowing the city of Elyria to petition the assessment.
Okay.
So that is giving permission to the administration to put that $500 assessment on the property. So that's actually the very first step. The other 4 documents are all go in tandem with one another.
Right.
It's a lot of legalese. Sorry to the legal department, but a lot of legalese that basically in tandem let you petition the assessment, levy the assessment, and tells you that the assessment is necessary for the improvement. So generally those are all going in tandem after one another, but the very first step is allowing the city of Elyria to petition that assessment.
My only question is actually for you, Dr. Calvert, and is that do you have everything that you need as far as the nitty gritty for this project that we would need to put into these documents?
Thank you.
Or that you can get, not for tonight necessarily, but that you can get to my office.
We have multiple projects in the pipeline. I did recently get a phone call from NOPEC telling me that they had one that they were working on. It's a commercial shopping center that they were looking to make improvements. They'd already reached out to NOPEC, and NOPEC was working on the underwriting. I don't have an exact timeline for that project, but I would say, the sooner we can implement, the better.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. So it sounds to me like in order to go through these 5 steps, then we're going to go through these 5 steps with the $500 lighting project for City Hall. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Correct. So what we're going to need in my office is all the information for that project so that we can go through these steps in the forms, because we can't submit to join without having all the information for our demonstration project.
Okay, I believe it was included in the legislation.
Exactly.
Sorry.
That's exactly
Okay.
right.
That was forwarded?
Yeah, the legislation is actually already written to include the $500
Okay.
assessment for the lighting improvement.
Okay.
So the legislation does accurately reflect that project
Okay,
currently.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll ask one more time. Any further questions, any more comments anybody's thought of in the meantime? Okay, we are going to be having 5 committee reports.
Mr. Chairman, long as we're waiting.
Yes, Mr. Baird.
Question. This almost seems too good to be true, quite honestly, as a tool in the toolbox for the city and for all those involved. How did this start? Where did it come from? Through the legislation, I think you said, from the state of Ohio?
Yes, absolutely. So Ohio was actually not the first state to institute PACE financing, so it's kind of trickled through the states. And Ohio, a little over a decade ago, decided to put it in the state legislation to allow for this type of financing.
Yeah, because this is great forward thinking, is particularly as they like to characterize us as a Rust Belt state. You know, so this is to bring things back, to put things so you can compete better with modern equipment, modern buildings, and under the, I'll put this sort of under the guise of energy savings. I mean, that's obviously a good thing, but that kind of makes it like, oh, see, if we do this, then that'll save, and so on. So I applaud those who brought it forward, and thank you for your presentation. It's been very enlightening, and I think this is something we certainly will move ahead with. Thank you.
Take your time. Take your time. Okay, with the help of Law Director Deary, we've brought this down to one committee report. So I'm going to read the committee report, and we'll go with the community development and financing. We have considered the matter of joining the Lorraine ESID and PACE financing. The City of Elyria is petitioned to join the existing Lorraine Energy Special Improvement District, ESID, and authorize PACE financing for the purposes of pursuing the lead lighting project at City Hall as a qualifying project. Could I get a motion from Community Development?
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded?
Question?
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Can I get a motion from Finance?
So moved, Mr.
Moved by
Chairman.
Mr. Baird.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Anytime you can get financing, that's different. Exactly. But we're a conduit. That's what works. It seems like it, maybe, and I'm not sure. We'll pass it on.
Seeing no further business for community development, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned for community development.
Here we are. Sure, sure. With the payback, yeah, yeah. It's, unreal. Mayor Thomas, take care.
Okay, we're going to continue on with finance.
Over here, that's all right.
First on the agenda is the approval of the special finance meeting minutes, August the 3rd and August the 10th of 2020, and the regular finance meetings of August 31st and October 26th of 2020. Can I get a motion?
Move approval on those.
Moved by Mr. Baird. Second by Mr. Tolet. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 2. We've considered the matter of the OPBA EPD. No, this is not. Is that the utility?
You don't have it. Packet.
Still looking for the community report. It's kind of the, is this a standard?
When they went down there, they didn't send them all.
Indian giver?
Can we keep it up?
Okay, that's fine. We'll go to item number 3. Okay, we'll go on to item number 3 while we figure out where item number 2 is at. So,
I got it.
we've considered the matter of the OPBA EPD dispatcher's contract in order to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement between the city of Elyria and the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association and the Elyria Police Dispatchers. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
By Mr. Baird. Second by Ms. Davis. Director Firestein.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair to members of the committee, I appreciate you considering this item in front of you this evening. This is a contract between the City of Elyria and its Elyria City Dispatchers. The difficulty in this contract was the fact that we are about a year and a half or halfway through what this current contract should have been. So this contract was supposed to start July of 2019, and we are now almost at the end of 2020, which, based on how 2020 has gone, thank God. But regardless, it puts you in a weird spot, especially with how the financials are much different now compared to when they were back in July of 2019, when you had a few other contracts be agreed to and submitted. So you had EPPA, you also had fire, and you had asked me a year before that. So it proved some difficulty, and I believe that what you have in front of you is a fair contract. After when COVID-19 first hit in the beginning of the year, kind of stopped negotiations with the Elyria Dispatch Union. We were slated to possibly go into fact-finding. We were able to come back to the table a little bit earlier this year, a few months ago, work through this, and I'm sure if you ask both sides wish they would have gotten a little bit more out of it, but that's the art of negotiation. So what you have in front of you is a 3% for the first year. That would be from July of 19 through June of 20, a 1% with a $400 signing bonus for the second year, and then for the third year, a 1% again, but with a $250 signing bonus during that third year. We believe this is a very, very fair contract, and we appreciate the patience and the opportunity to negotiate with the dispatchers on this and be open to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Oswald?
I guess my first question would be, is this retroactive? When does it start?
If I may, through the chair, to Councilman Oswald, yes, this would be retroactive. The first year would be retroactive back from those years as well, and then whatever would have to catch us up for this year would be retroactive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Mr. Farrell, if you want to weigh in on maybe what we're looking at as far as the retroactive and what's brought here before us as far as these raises or agreement.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, it looks like a total for the contract of cost to the city of about $60,000, and half of that would be retroactive. We're looking at 36 payrolls looking in arrears to calculate this retro payment. So, and the difficult part of that is the pension board requires this information to be broken out by month when it's earned. So I ask for their patience as we calculate this on the payroll side.
Sure. With regard to this, then, Mr. Firestein, is it my understanding that this is a Me Too with ASME?
To the chair, that is incorrect. The Me Too is attached to the EPPA wage reopener for 2021, which we are still in the current negotiations with them as well. We were able to get this accomplished, and that is the last remaining wage reopener for the current contracts, and then we will start all this fun again next year for all the contracts that end at the end of next calendar year.
Okay, thank you. I stand corrected on that. Is there any other further discussion in regards to what's brought here before us? Any further discussion? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. With the COVID and our income, how's this going to sit with the city with this increase? And then next year, another increase. So how's it going to be sitting with the city?
Through you, Mr. Chair. You know, we do have the COVID money, the CARES Act money has helped the city out considerably. It has helped the general fund, it's relieved some stress on the general fund. But as I have said in the past, there's going to come a day soon when we're going to be hurting when Bendix leaves and when all these school projects end. So there's going to come a day then we really have to start considering no raises for some of the, if we can bargain for that, because we're going to be in a position we're going to be stressed, when Bendix leaves. So we have to be mindful of that moving forward.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We'll follow up with item number 2. We've considered the matter of inactive delinquent utility accounts and resolution authorizing the attached list of utility accounts that have been approved by the EPU and to be submitted to the Lorraine County Auditor's Office for property liens. Can I get a motion and get it on the floor?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Ms. Davis. Second by Mr. Tolet. Ms. Connor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. There is a list of 13 accounts for a total of $5,004.62. They are all inactive accounts that left balances on them.
Okay. This is kind of standard what we're going over and through. So is there any further discussion? Which I will add, I know it's not part of this committee report, but is there an update in regards to moving forward with making it effective December the 1st for those? Is there a...
Go ahead.
Director Firestein?
Yes, sorry about that. Through the chair, to members of the committee, we are pushing forward on that. We've been working a lot with Salvation Army in order to notify as many residents that can take advantage of that program, of how to apply, where to find that assistance at. We have tagged a lot of doors through the work of our service workers, letting people know that the date's coming up for December 1st. So we have done a very proactive job of not just letting people know that that date is coming up, but also where to find assistance. And through the leadership of Director Connor, as well as Mayor Whitfield, we have worked with Salvation Army, and we feel very confident that we have given as many resources as we can during this trying time, but also understanding that we have the unfortunate business side of the city to operate and continue. So the mayor wants to add anything to
Mayor Whitfield?
Yep, and through you, Chair, I just want to remind the residents that not only can they go locally to youcanapply.org and get assistance through the Salvation Army, but also through the state of Ohio, they've just released funds to support this work as well, and they can go to their local community action agency and get support for that as well. So use our office, call us if you need help navigating it, and the director and the safety service director and Salvation Army and community development have a standing call where they check in to see how many folks are taking advantage of it. I think it's every other week that we have our standing call, so we're on it.
Very good. Mr. Oswald, did you have a question?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. I think I just read something maybe that the county's got some avenues where if you are late on your bills, you can get money. So, and I can't remember where I just read that, if anybody knows anything about that, but it was through the county. But basically you have to have a delinquent bill or a bill that's owed. It can't be to help in case you can't make it. So I guess maybe if somebody could check into that and maybe get that question answered.
Will do.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Thank you, Ms. Connor. Is there any further discussion? Question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Connor. Item number 4. We've considered the matter of the Ohio minimum wage increase in ordinance authorizing to amend the salary ordinance to reflect the state of Ohio minimum wage effective January 1st, 2020 to the amount of $8.80 per hour. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor? Moved by Mr. Baird, second by Ms. Davis. Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On what's become an annual exercise here, the state of Ohio's minimum wage is moving to $8.80 from $8.70. And so there's a number of pay grades that you have attached that are affected by this change. Although really there's only one city employee that's in one of those pay grades. So we'll
standard.
Take care of that.
Sure. Any questions for Mr. Farrell? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So how many employees is in this pay, how many did you say was in the pay area?
If you refer to, I think it's page 6 of the handout, you'll see that there's 12 pay grades that are affected. One which is a clerk in a muni court. That's actually at the pay grade 1, which is currently at $8.70. So that person will automatically be moved to $8.80. There's only 3 other people in the part-time ordinance right now for any of these 12 grades. And all 3 of those are in the Parks and Rec Department. They're rink guards, but they're already at a step which is higher than $8.80. So they're not affected by it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 5. We consider the matter of correcting exhibits to 4 ordinances. An ordinance authorizing the finance director to correct the exhibits to the following ordinances: 2020-99, 2020-121, 2020-135, and 2000-140 per the attached. Can I get a motion to get on the floor? Moved by Mr. Baird. Second by Ms. Davis. Mr. Farrell.
Through you again, Mr. Chairman. When we did the ordinance for the original distribution of the CARES Act funds, the amount we received was $1,622,181. I mistakenly prepared the exhibit in the amount of $1,662,181. And so subsequent to that, when we received the second and the third distribution, and then we also reallocated some funds with that 2020-148, the $40,000 error just carried forward. But I would like to point out, Mr. Tolet asked me before the meeting, this is on the budget side of the fund. It wasn't overspent. So if we look to date, we received $4,370,446 in the 3 distributions. And we've actually spent cash-wise $1,485,235. And we have $1,135,359 encumbered. So what's left in the fund is to be encumbered and spent is $2,620,594. And that will all really end up being out of the staffing department, which we'll talk about here in a minute.
Okay. Any questions, other questions from Mr. Farrell in regards item number 5? Question been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 6. We've considered the matter of changes to the permanent appropriations and ordinance authorizing and amending the 2020 permanent appropriation ordinance to reflect the changes per the attached. Can I get a motion? Moved by Mr. Baird.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Mr. Farrell. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 2 appropriation changes this evening, and those would involve 3 different funds. The first change is in a general fund under Judge 1 department, which is Judge Bennett, increase in operating and maintenance by $1,193. And the second part of that change is in the special probation fund, special probation department, an operating and maintenance increase of $303. And the Muni Court received a refund from their copy rental company, and they've just asked that that be appropriated back into their accounts. Now, the second change is to the local coronavirus relief fund. And if you remember, October 20th, we were to report the progress and the amount of those funds that we had spent, the $4,370,446. And to date, the numbers that I just recited, what we're doing with this this second change would be just to reallocate the unspent or unencumbered monies out of the Muni Court Department, the Miscellaneous Department, the Small Business Assistance Department, and the Community Essential Services Department, and move those monies into the Staffing Department. And what that will allow us to do will be to reimburse ourselves for police and fire expenditures, as well as the balance of the year for the employees who are involved in COVID-related mitigation. So I can read these one by one if you like. In the Staffing Department, we'll be adding in salary and wages $88,134. And then in the Muni Court Department, salary and wages, they've spent most of what were allocated, so we're reducing theirs by $96, and their benefits and pension by $63. And the employee that they had in this fund, or in this department, we've since transferred that expense into the Staffing Department, so we're not cutting them off over there, we're just paying it out of a different department. Under the miscellaneous, COVID-19 miscellaneous department, we're reducing the capital outlay by $4,960, and that's just money that was left after we had spent or purchased whatever they needed to purchase. Under the small business assistance, we're reducing that by $8,043 in operating and maintenance. And if you remember, we originally appropriated $500,000, so out of that, small businesses are still able to collect $491,957. And in the Community Essential Services, their appropriation is being reduced by $74,972 in operating and maintenance. And for the same reason, the original amount was appropriated $348,750, and we've allocated $273,778 to various community essential services.
Any questions? Mr. Baird?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Are we on par? When have they moved the goalposts when on these things yet? That seems to be a regular event. I know you said by October, but then I know that's extended to December 30th, I think it was. Is that any changes that we know of at this point, or what's happening?
Mayor Whitfield?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
I didn't know if, John, if you want to, and then the mayor can weigh on it. John, if you want to weigh in.
Well, I'll speak from I guess how we're protecting ourselves through the chairman. But since we're moving this money into the staffing, the balance of what's left to spend, we've essentially already spent it. You could go back to March 1st through the end of the year. As you know, I think we have a little over $1.5 million left in the staffing. So police and fire expenditures will easily cover that, so.
They use it up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Are there any additional funds that we know of that might be coming at this point in time, or just curiosity?
Mayor Whitfield?
So through you, Chair, first off, I want to thank council because we got a head start. I think we started talking about this a lot faster than other jurisdictions, and we had a plan, we put it in place, and thank you to the staff who executed. We are in position after tonight, if everything is allocated, we would have had allocated, encumbered, spent all this next round of CARES, which would make us eligible for another round. So that's based on a November 20th deadline. So we'll communicate to the county that, hey, we've expended all of our dollars, which would then open us up for additional resources that some communities didn't even take. So I'm just proud of the work we've done and appreciate council for their support and trust.
Thank you.
Through you also, do we feel that we're meeting the guidelines, you know, because at some point there'll be an audit, I presume, and so I assume we feel comfortable with it. I'll ask you anyway so you can verify it.
Mr. Chairman, yes, we're very comfortable. We've been great communication between the mayor's office and safety service office, the Muni Court, and it's, I feel like, yes, I won't lose any sleep over between now and then, I hope.
John, I know you can't afford to lose any beauty sleep, so we're gonna go with that. But I appreciate all the effort that your office has put in and with the mayor and the, all the others involved, because it can be complicated when it's all thrown at you at once, and then you have to, you know, filter it out to make sure you're doing it correctly. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. I think on the plus side, the money has been really spent in some great areas too, and it's spread around businesses in the city. The city, ourselves, we've made some strides with some of what we've been able to accomplish, so.
Great job. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion in regards to that? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I was just looking over some of these. So, and I see you wearing a regular mask. Did we invest in the KN95 mask for departments or even City Hall as a general rule? Did we get those special masks they say that's available since we had COVID money? The KN95.
Mayor, Director Fire, Senator Mayor Whitfield, you want to entertain that question?
Yes, absolutely. Through the chair to members of the committee, when this first started, Assistant Director Brubaker was on top of it. I've likened him to Red from Shawshank Redemption. If you needed it, he got it for you. And we invested quite a bit early on, mainly for the workers that were going to be outside interacting more in the elements than inside the office. But for the office workers, we also bought as many masks as we can get our hands on and have those available to our workers. And I know Assistant Director Brubaker has gone out to CMG and a few other spots on checkups just to say, do you have enough, you know, PPE? Do you need any more? And making sure, so we are fully stocked and making sure that we provide that to the departments that need them and get them to when they request it.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add that when I walked into the building this morning, Brett Schneider, who's our main maintenance guy, was setting up, I believe they're automatic temperature monitors where you walk by these pedestals and they take your temperature. So apparently we use the COVID money to buy 2 of them. So it'll inform, I guess, the people walking by whether they have a high temperature or not, so.
Very good.
Does that mean how hot they are?
Hopefully, if they do, they'll turn around and go back out.
Right. Is there any further discussion? Questions been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
That's it.
So, John, great job with that, as well as Director Firestein and the mayor, Ted, and everybody was associated. Like what Mr. Baird said, it was a undaunting task, but we're not done. We're hopeful that we'll get more funds that'll be useful for us. But will you be making we had talked, I think, in the last finance meeting, I believe, or maybe the last full council meeting, about making a presentation about those individual small businesses that were working through those opportunities that help them out. Is that going to be this next coming one, or do we have enough information together yet, or we still need some time?
Yeah, so we sent council all the applicants and the status, so you should have received that maybe 2 weeks ago. It was about, not this Friday, but the Friday before you were sent that. And the plan is to present which ones got finalized, because there is a lot of paperwork right now, and if a business doesn't bring in the paperwork, then they don't get the money. So
Sure.
It's kind of in process now.
Sure, very good. Is there any further discussion? Anything more to come before this committee? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move we adjourn, Mr.
Moved by
Chairman.
Mr. Baird.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.